Well, welcome to our 9-week course, Discover the Constitution. On behalf of the Center for Advancing Freedom, I'm Tom Draschil, and we want to thank Bishop Strickland to begin with, and the Catholic Diocese for hosting us this time and allowing us to use the facility, especially Diana Jones, who has been very graciously put up with us and showed us the ropes, and also the other fathers and so on who were willing to advertise this and let you know about it. We're going to start with an opening prayer, and then we'll explain how this will go and so on. And Rudy Wright, lead us in a prayer then, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you watch over and guide us in all our days, and we thank you very much for the opportunity to come together and study one of the most amazing miracles that you've blessed on this earth, the freedom that is enshrined and protected with our Constitution. As we go through this, we ask that you guide our understanding and help us to know the best ways to move forward for our kids and our posterity to enjoy the freedoms that you want for all of us. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Rudy. Can y'all see this back there in the back? Can you read that?
Here. I couldn't get them to read it. Now they can.
Okay, good. Well, this we did an 8-week course before, but we've expanded it and added a week on religious freedom because of the just unbelievable attacks that there are today, and it's just going to get worse and worse on religious freedom, particularly Christians and Jews. And so we'll have 9 weekly classes here. The class is designed to be an hour and a half in length, and you should have a copy of that. We just wanted to pass out the outline to everyone. If you don't have an outline, please, raise your hand, and Richard or Rudy have those. But that's what we're looking at right now. Today, one of the classes will be a few minutes longer because we're going to watch a movie called A More Perfect Union. It is excellent on the making of the Constitution. You'll feel the spirit of the convention, which was good and bad because there was a lot of contention at the convention, but there ultimately was amazing unity. And so this first week we'll be talking about the preludes to American government. Next week we'll declare independence. The third week we'll start with the Constitution itself, and we will march through the Constitution. I promise you that you will understand, you'll be more familiar with, and even understand the Constitution better than 95%, 98% of Americans. You'll probably be more familiar with the Constitution than I was by the time I graduated from law school, to be safe, because we didn't really study the Constitution. Then we'll watch the movie, and the next week will be on federalism. That sounds kind of boring. When I started teaching over at TJC, I thought about not even teaching the chapter on federalism. By the way, this course is kind of a condensed course that we generally do about 32 class periods. Federalism is exciting. It's Article 1, Section 8 versus the 10th Amendment. It's the big elephant in the room. It's the thing that's being ignored constantly by our President, our Congress, and our Supreme Court and so on. And then civil rights, which of course is fascinating. It's mostly history from 1776 or even before that up to today. And then we'll do a week on religious liberty. Leave it at that. And then the purpose of this is not to be a public affair it's not meant to be a
Current events.
Yeah, current events class. Thank you. However, I expect that in our discussions and so on, and questions and comments and so on, that current events are going to come up. I'm not trying to stay away from them. I'm just saying that the purpose of this class is not to make it current events. It is not to get into discussions or disagreements and for the most part about every different issue. The purpose of it is to learn the principles of the Constitution, the rule of law, so that we can do a better job of applying the Constitution to whatever issues and when we go to the voting booth to measure our candidates against them. One of my hopes is that all of us in our lives will develop a list of things that we believe in, principles that we believe in, and measure candidates and issues against those things. Otherwise, we all go to, we go to the voting booth and we've heard them, and most politicians sound pretty good, and then you listen to the guy that's running against him, he sounds pretty good too, and Mom says this guy's really good. The good friend in whom we have great confidence says that this guy's really good, and so on. We're going to find out today, real quickly, that each of us is responsible. And not everybody has to run for public office and so on, but we all are the sovereigns, and we have to learn some way to do our duty better than we have done in the past, because we're in troublesome times. Let me just put that up a little bit further, see if there's anything else. We will talk about the Fed and the Bush Doctrine. I don't believe that you can learn about government in the United States and understand what's going on here and in the world without understanding central banking, which really pretty much controls politics in the world and largely here in the United States, and also the Bush Doctrine that defines our foreign war policy, whether we're for it or against it. I will emphasize here at the very beginning, I will try not to take a position on any particular issue and push that, but to point out what both sides of the issue are. It will be clear. I teach over there at TJC, and they tell us that we're not supposed to tell the students what our political slant is. And I tell them, you can't hide your political slant for 5 minutes. They're not that dumb, you know. Nobody is. But so we go out of our way. I go out of my way to make sure that we talk about the two sides. It's rule of law versus rule of man. We'll get to that.
I'll make that one point about the Bible and the Constitution.
Nope. Oh, you want to make a point?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we met. Go ahead.
One of the reasons that I'm helping him do this is the Bible's the most important book in the world, and we study it every day or at least once a week. The Constitution is so important in America, and we never study it. So what I hope we can do here is learn the Constitution and keep learning it, and maybe have, like Sunday school or something like that, you get with your friends and tell them what you learned. And it's time to stand up and pay attention to what our founders gave us, because it's slipping away.
Before we get started on anything, I'm going to tell you what I consider the most important thing that we will learn from this entire time. It is the basis of everything. It's the basis of the rule of law. It's the basis of government in America. It's the thing that makes us different from every other country in the world. Now, I'm not talking about Red China and North Korea. I'm talking about England and France and Germany, the great Western democracies. The thing that makes America different. We'll put that up there too. It's the same thing. Pardon?
Okay.
The catechism. All my life I've been calling this the catechism. All of a sudden, my face was a room full of people who know what the catechism really is. And well, I was born here in Tyler, but I grew up over in Louisiana, and there's a lot of like half the kids were Catholic, and they learned their catechisms then. And I think of catechism as question and answer in the way that you learn some doctrines and so on. But I've been calling this a catechism forever. If it's not the right use of a word for a catechism, if catechisms are not, I hope you'll forgive me. But I have come up with another word for it. It's the way that I ask our students to memorize this. I just tell them, we're going to go over this 100 times. You're going to see different phrases in here, in the Declaration, in the Constitution, and over, and more you'll get to where you say, I get it. And it is this, that God is the sovereign. This is just an amalgamation of mostly Thomas Jefferson quotes, but many, if not most of the founding fathers said the same thing. God is the sovereign, and he made us sovereigns when he made us free. How did he make us free? When he gave us unalienable rights. God-given unalienable rights. He made us, the people, the source of law. That's a heady thing. He made us the source of law by making us sovereigns. And this is the basis of the rule of law. It's why we have to have the consent of the governed, because we, the governed, are the sovereigns. We really are the sovereigns. That's what our founding fathers understood very clearly. And this is why in America, no man's above the law. It's why we, the people, have written down the law on a sheet of paper. It's called the U.S. Constitution. I tell my students, at the very beginning, you don't have to believe in God to get an A in this class. You will have to repeat on the test that our founders believed in God, and that our government is based on the laws of God, on the Creator, and the laws of nature, the nature's God that we'll learn about. We've written it down on a sheet of paper. It's called the U.S. Constitution. It is our marching orders to our President, to our Congress, and to our elected and appointed servants on a local, state, and national level. It's written specifically. I'm quoting this right now. I'm pretty much quoting the Declaration of Independence. Thank you. The first paragraph. It's written specifically to make sure that they, our elected and appointed leaders, government leaders, protect our God-given unalienable rights. That's what government is for. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. It's for to protect our God-given unalienable rights. And if it ever gets to the point, as Jefferson said, if it ever gets to the point again where we are not being protected in our unalienable rights, then it is our right and our responsibility. It wasn't just Jefferson. He said this because Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau said it. He said it. He's doing it because Cicero said it 1,800 years before that. Then it's our right and responsibility to abolish that government. And how do you do that? That's what the Second Amendment is for. You bloodshed, you know. Jefferson.
Did we lose your volume?
Testing, testing, testing. I don't even know how to use this.
It was working.
Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. It's off. I guess I could use the microphone over there.
It would be better.
If you wouldn't mind getting, or someone get the microphone. I'm just going to keep talking here for the time being. All of you, let's see if we, the materials, just so that you know, that we didn't have a way of letting you know about this ahead of time, but the materials that we're going to use in this class are the 5,000-Year Leap by Cleon Skousen, of course the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, the 5,000-Year Leap, and we're going to have an annotated Constitution that will be printed up by the time that we get to it. Thank you. Well, okay. At least the machine will be able to record this now. Zeldin Nelson, who's the president of, or the owner of National Center for Constitutional Studies, is, we'll give him a plug because he lets us have these books at cost or below cost, so that we ask people for a $5 donation if they want to do it. And you get the book, which is a 1995 book that sells for $12 to $15 on Amazon. We get the book plus a Constitution, plus we're getting printed an annotated Constitution that'll be $4 or $5 itself. NCCS, that's my little plug for them.net, National Center for Constitutional Studies, that provides this stuff to us at below cost. So if you would like it, we'd like every single one of you to have one. I'll give you what I would recommend, just a few pages of reading most of the weeks. One to go back and kind of review for today, but then some for next week. And it will make this. You will get much more out of the course if you'll do this. This is a book that, if you know Glenn Beck, you've heard of Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck said this changed his life about 5 or 6 years ago. The 5,000-Year Leap. It's very readable. There are a lot of good books, of course, on the Constitution and going through it. But this is very readable. It is. It has a couple of parts in it that are. It's the only place that I can find these. One of them that I'm going to talk about here in a minute is the very first principle. It starts on about page 30 after a long introduction, and it's about Cicero. I have never seen a college textbook that mentions Cicero. They talk about Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau, and I put those on the deal here. But Cicero was the man, and he was the one that Thomas Jefferson quoted. He was the one that our founding fathers, they were very familiar with him. I don't know why we're not today, and except, you know, he wasn't part of the Restoration. He wasn't the Restoration. What do we call it? The Reformation. He wasn't part of the philosophers there in the 1700s and so on. but he is the one that laid the foundation for all of them and articulated it better than anyone did. So if you just, what I'd recommend is you'll have a glossary. We'll have a glossary every single week, just like this one here, and we'll go through that glossary. And I please ask you anytime, don't hesitate, feel like you just need to listen. I will appreciate anyone that has any questions or comments to stop us. We are flexible enough to do that, but we're going to start and kind of go through the glossary here. The first one on there is sovereign. What's your idea? Just, I want to make sure that we have the same thoughts in our mind. In your mind, what is a sovereign?
The boss.
What do you think of when you, pardon me?
I say the boss.
He's the boss, sovereign.
in charge.
He's in charge. We think of kings as sovereigns and so on. There's nobody above the sovereign. And God is the sovereign. Our founding fathers believe that God is the sovereign, and that he made us sovereigns when he gave us, when he made us free, when he gave us unalienable rights. He made us sovereigns, made us the source of law in a free society. Why would he do that? Why would he delegate a power of godhood to us? And why would he let us have little children too?
Where it is it?
Beg pardon?
Where it is it? And if you have that Bible issue,
You know, we can talk about God more freely here. Up there, I've got one of the other full-time professors. He says you can't talk about God in the. I said, you teach federal government here like I do? He says, yeah. And I said, how in the world do you teach federal government? How do you teach chapter 1 or chapter 2 and whatever the books are? How do you talk about God-given unalienable rights? How do you talk about the Declaration of Independence, the laws of nature, and of nature's God, and all the quotes, thousands of them from the founders? How can you not talk about God? You can't talk about God. We can talk about God here, so we won't be limited. He is our Father. He's the Father of our spirits. We're in His image. We believe that He, and the founders believe that He gave us unalienable rights. That they're ours by nature. As He is absolutely free, we are absolutely free. Just like the nose on the middle of our face or our fingers on our hands, it is natural. That's what we call natural law that we'll get to here in a minute. So God is the sovereign. The next is rule of law versus rule of man. Does anyone here venture, in your mind, what's the difference between rule of law versus rule of man? Yes?
A rule of law would be like, if this sounds stupid, if you have a relation between a man and woman, it can conceive a baby, that would be just, that's nature, what nature does. A rule of man would be that he has a stop sign. I mean, he has to stop the stop sign.
Okay, I'm glad I asked the question because I want to make sure, and we probably could use these in different ways, but I'm going to want to use them in a specific way.
I think the rule of man has a basic outline with lots and lots and lots of exceptions and these, that, and the other. Rules of God doesn't. Thou shalt not steal.
In the way that I'm going to use them, they are that rule of law is where law is made by God, or in our case now on this earth, He's delegated it to us and made us sovereigns, and we're the source of law according to our founding fathers. And so we write down the law. And we have rule of law here in America so that no man is above the law. Rule of man, that's like kings and tyrants and dictators and caliphs and emirs and just about every other, every kind of a pure democracy can be a rule of man also. But rule of law says that there are laws that no man, no woman can break. We have to obey the law. So when we're talking about politically here, we're talking about legal and political terms. When we say rule of law, that's what this catechism, I'm going to go ahead and turn around and leave it up. That's what this catechism is all about. It defines the rule of law. There you go.
If you're not gonna hold that up, let's try this again.
I'll hold it up. I'm sorry, I'll do better. I'll do better. Okay, so rule of law, we the people make laws. We create governments to protect our God-given unalienable rights. And we create laws, and our supreme law, of course, as we will learn a lot better, is the United States Constitution. All other laws, all other state constitutions have to conform to the U.S. Constitution. All right, so what's the next one on here? Rule of law, rule of man, political spectrum. When you think of a political spectrum, we talk about somebody's on the right, or they're on the far right, or they're on the left, and so on. Before I give too many examples about that, I'm going to want to say to you that from my perspective and from the book, there's a real good chapter on correct political spectrum. A spectrum has to measure something. A spectrum of light measures wavelengths of light. You have the invisible, you've got ultra high frequencies, very high frequencies, and microwave frequencies. You have the visible light from infrared through ultraviolet, and the colors, I guess, are in between those, aren't they? And that's where they become invisible and into those. And microphone. AM, just keep me, AM, we have a little radio station in another state, and we're AM, amplitude modulation. There's FM, frequency modulation. But so a spectrum has to measure something. A political spectrum measures government control versus human freedom. And so, much as I hate to erase this, no, I'm not going to erase it. I'm just turn around and on the other side. That's what this is for. A correct political spectrum measuring human freedom. Here's 100% government, which of course would be 0% human freedom. And that's where we've got all the tyrants and so on. And over here we have 0% government. I'm not going to put 100% human freedom because that's not what our founders believed. They said, you got to have some government. And so they said in the balanced middle, they came up with our system of government under the U.S. Constitution, which is the rule of law. This is anarchy, chaos. With the exception of one good friend of mine, I don't know anyone that wants 0% government, because we'll all be speaking German or Japanese or something, because other people have governments, have national governments. And so we knew that we had to have a strong national government, strong enough to protect us from other people who might want to take away our freedoms, that might want to enslave us, and so on. So this is what the founding fathers, in the book, I call this 0% government, 100% government. They call this ruler's law over here, ruler's law, which is the rule of man. Kings, caliphs, emperors, sorry, I can't read this, and so on. And we can make a long list there. Probably 95, 98% of people who have lived on the earth have lived under the rule of man. Ours was the first, certainly the first large government in recorded history that had what we call the rule of law. So nothing much happens here. Nobody wants less government. I mean, most people want more government than the Constitution. So let me just talk. The reason that if we're using the old political spectrum, someone's on the far left. Who's on the far left? It's okay, we can say that.
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders is on the far left, okay. Who's on the far, pardon me?
You mean in this room?
What?
Do you mean in this room?
In this room.
I know who's on the far left in this room.
Raise your hand. Okay.
Okay, are
There
you
you
on the
go.
far left?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you you're not on the far left, okay, but so if you're very liberal, what people would call liberal,
I'm liberal like Jesus.
okay. I am too. In fact, I'm a liberal in the classic, like Thomas Jefferson said, and so on. But all that I'm going to try to do this is in percentage of a government versus human freedom. Most people would say, well, the liberals are on the left, the conservatives are on the right. Stalin and Lenin and Mao Zedong, they're on the far left, and Hitler's on the far right, right? Well, if I'm a constitutionalist, which most people would say is a conservative, well, that puts me, they might even say that I'm on the far right. That puts me over by Hitler. I'm very uncomfortable. I am not near Hitler at all. As far as human freedom is concerned, well, where is Lenin and Stalin here?
100% government.
100% government. Let's just put them here because that word Lenin,
Microphone.
Stalin. Where's Mao Zedong?
It's over there.
Where's Hitler as far as percentage of government is concerned?
He's also socialist.
He's a thug too. That's right. Hitler. And Idi Amin and Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great and Napoleon. I mean, he's a little bit romantic. My wife and I, when we got married, we went on a honeymoon to Europe, and we were in Paris. I remember we said, let's take a bus tour. We had rented a car, but let's take a bus tour, and they could take us around all the sites. It seemed like every other site we went to was a monument to one of Napoleon's victories. You know, and about the sixth or seventh, we're sitting towards the back of the bus, and towards about the sixth or seventh one, I said, "This is a monument to Napoleon's victory at some place," and I said, "Hooray for Napoleon, the thug!" It was just really quiet. And I said to my wife, he was no better than Hitler or Stalin or Alexander the Great or anyone who used hundreds of thousands of his people for his own vainglory and power. He said it was for the glory of France, and apparently France liked it, But he was a tyrant. He did exercise 100% power, and if you didn't go along with him, you were in a heap of trouble. So
Didn't he actually do that by defining himself as France?
he did say those words, and he apparently believed it. It was a big ego. And, whether he was right or wrong, he was over here. Listen, where are kings over here? What about kings and monarchs? Where would we put them here? They have this much power. They may not, kings and queens, they may not exercise that kind of power, but they have that kind of power. It's a very efficient system. You remember in the Old Testament, the Israelites had a system that was relatively near to our Constitution. They had judges. They had the rule of law that they were to follow God's law and so on, and their secular laws followed God's laws and so on. But they wanted to have a king because all the other nations had a king. They said to Samuel, "We want a king. We want a king." And Samuel said, "You'll be sorry. It'll lead to bondage," and so on. But they wanted a king, and so the Lord said, "Okay, let them have a king." So he told Samuel to anoint Saul, and then David and Solomon and so on. I did maybe 25 years ago, just for interest's sake, I went through all the kings that there were in the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel, and as I recall, there were about 60% bad and 40% good in the kingdom of Judah, and about 70% bad and 30% good in the kingdom of Israel. It was just, I don't know if that's correct, because not all of them were